But for colonialism, there would be no Ghana. In fact, it is most likely that Ashanti would have conquered the rest of Ghana. They had. It was the British that stopped. But if you get an Ashanti who is troublesome, he can create problems for the nation Ghana.
And this is Professor Ahwoi. He is a local governance expert. In fact, in this contest, any media statement we in every mobile and they all trendy with their bits and pieces of the videos are air corner. Ebusia, we are the chairman of the Interministerial Coordinating Committee on Decentralization. Emu edo mkodi media or share media engagement or hokan some ebusia answer no air course now. And that's sorry, videos are air corner bits and pieces of it. So I decided to dig deep and actually find out a full video. A clear context as to where he is coming from and where he's arriving at with all these statements. Now, many are about 2 videos are. These 2 videos combined, about 8 minutes of opening statement at least. By the end of those 8 minutes, we will the full context. But then interestingly, the government agency are organizing this program on Facebook, on social media pages, they couldn't stream into the full video anymore. Now, the public is left with bits and pieces of videos as a Ubia airdrop conclusions based on Anglo work. Now, in that video, no opinions or cancer, some pro-Ashanti comments and blogs are ever in reaction to this video. So, Emma a different perspective because according to opinion statement, I'm not for being so within meaning say. Now, because a buying expert who go aiming the potential, the tendency for the Ashantis to break away from a Ghana, they are deliberately starving Ashanti region of development and major resources so that they wouldn't feel so much empowered as a break away. Because opinions say the reason why Ashanti region currently Ghana is the fact that yen head then something he said be tribo mina so person break away. And yenda the modern one, the current one, yes, say already he is a man of peace, or pay as en kabumu and a debi awaye, and yes, sir. Professor Ahwoi Nanka say no masem say, based on the history of Ashantis, our know and the potential of Ashanti tribe and Ashanti kingdom, and the Dagon tribe and Momo kingdom. These 2 tribes especially, they have the tendency to break away from Ghana at any given point if care is not taken. Professor Ahwoi is making statements and number 1, the 6 new regions are President Akuffo TM. Opening James said then time no President Akuffo nyadwene. Because as a ukreti no the problem be because there is a problem Kwame Nkrumah time. Now Professor or address it. And the creation of these 6 new regions no assign so reignite that problem no. So according to Professor Ahwoi, the 6 new regions are President Akuffo no. It did more harm than good. The disadvantages no such the advantages are at the buyer. In fact, we said there was only one region and as a making meaning, a making sense here. Aside that, all the others now Ghana so far be 16 regions no. It doesn't really make sense to him. It wasn't necessary. And a better threat for the unity of one Ghana project. I was going to open the second video about the context. How they arrive at the Ashantis and their potential to break away. No?
I disagreed completely with the creation of those new regions. There was some legitimacy. Where I come from, and my father comes from Sishi. I am from the Bodi district. They had a case because the distance from, say, Bia East, Bodi, Bia West, to the regional capital, Sarkodie, it takes you about 8 hours, 10 hours, between 8 and 10 hours. Now, we don't have district land offices. So to register your land in Bia West district, you have to travel 10 hours to Sarkodie to go and register. Now, one of the things decentralization is doing, or the creation of the new regions. Now, Sehiri also, the regional capital, has a regional lands officer. And therefore, the distance, for the traveling distance, for example, has been shortened. So there are some good reasons for creating the new regions. The NDC, for example, is compelled by virtue of their own policy now to establish public universities in the 6 regions, because they had always had a principle that every region must have a university. They are compelled to establish district regional hospitals in all the 6 regions, because they had a philosophy of one regional hospital. And they are working towards it, but it's not going to be very easy. So it has its advantages. But, and this is where my problem comes in. At independence, in 1957, we had only 5 regions: Eastern, Western, Ashanti, Northern Territories, and Transvolta Togoland, which has become today's Volta region. There were 5 regions. In 1960, under the Republican Constitution, Western region was broken up into Western and Central, and Ashanti was broken up into Ashanti and Prof. So we got 10 regions. So we got 8 regions. Then in 1982, it wasn't Upper West that was created in 1982. It was Greater Accra region that was created in 1982, and it was carved out of Eastern region. And then in 1983, Upper West was carved out of the Upper region. So then we got 10 regions. So between 1957 and 2017, thereabouts, we can calculate the number of years. There was an increase of only 5 or so regions. So then within 2 years, one president came and created 6 regions. Now, if you do a historical analysis, is it because the previous presidents were foolish, or they didn't understand governance, or what? There must be a reason why the 6 new regions were created. Unfortunately, I don't think that the reason for their creation benefited the person who created them, because what he wanted them to do, they didn't do. And I will end at that. But I don't think that the 6 new regions were necessary. If for nothing at all, it has created a certain danger that Nkrumah from the beginning tried to avoid.
In fact, according to the statement Albert in the second video, Chim say the Ghana na was a colonial construct. A Mcbrown colonization pe any bit Ghana. Yes, sir. And as it stands now, the Ashantis, a full state, a full country on its own, the Dagon, they have the potential to break away and form their own country. But then, thanks to colonialism, Mcbrown, and as a multi-weekend Asante for a combo Mombekan, yes, sir. And by now, the Ashantis and the Dagon kingdoms, no, or one and give form countries or more strong. So, according to Open James, the potential for Ashanti to break away, no, a hang on. And it only takes one Ashanti kina or yes stubborn enough, and there is a possibility says Addo ebeba.
In decentralizing, you must be aware that there are separatist tendencies. It is very easy to move from decentralization to separation to federalism to balkanization to secession and to the breakdown of the country. This is the reason why we have a very weak regional level in our decentralization system. I'll give you 2 examples. Don't ever think that Ghana can remain or will remain Ghana forever. Ghana, like almost all African countries, with the exception of Ethiopia and Liberia, are artificial, or Ghana is an artificial colonial construct. But for colonialism, there would be no Ghana. In fact, it is most likely that Ashanti would have conquered the rest of Ghana. They had. It was the British that stopped them. So when you have an artificial construct like that, with a very strong empire, and Ashanti was an empire, and you say you are decentralizing, you must watch what you do. Fortunately, we have had very wise Ashanti who have not created a problem. But if you get an Ashanti who is troublesome, you can create problems for the nation Ghana. And I'll give you 2 examples. When in our youth, when we were schooling, there were no countries like Ukraine or Kyrgyzstan or all those countries. There was nothing like that. There was no Kosovo, no Bosnia-Herzegovina. There was Yugoslavia, which broke up or which has broken up into 6 different countries. Bosnia and Herzegovina, Kosovo, Serbia, and them. Then there was USSR, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, which was made up of 15 different republics, each of which was strong enough to become a state. Ukraine was part of that, so we call it the Soviet Union. And Ukraine, in fact, was the intellectual center of the USSR. It existed for 70 years, 70 plus years, USSR. And then in the late 1990s, it broke up. And each state went its different way, and we got about 15 new countries in the world. I also made reference to Nigeria. Nigeria started off with 3 big states: Northern region, Eastern region, Western region. Each had the population, the land mass, the resources, etc. All they needed was a charismatic leader. And then they got one when Lieutenant Colonel Odumegu Ojukwu became the governor of Eastern Nigeria. He broke away and formed the country Biafra. General Gowon, who was the head of the federal Nigeria, waged a war which lasted 3 years before he could keep Nigeria together, 1967 to 1970. By the end of that war, 1 million people had died. So the lesson this teaches us is that decentralization is good, but if you don't take care, it can be a great danger to the unity of the state. And I have explained to you that Ashanti could easily be a country. The Dagomba Kingdom could easily be a country. We don't want to fashion out a governance system that will give an excuse for Ghana to break up.
Now, by that statement, some pro-Ashanti blogs, any comments via Airban, so say, or reading meanings into opinion a statement say, then it means the potential also Ashanti for bit me a break of that is why successive governments are Ahwoi or try say best start the Ashanti region of development, the Buankra inland ponds, the airport, and other projects Ahwoi Sebeya. The Ashantis wouldn't feel too empowered enough, say, or make us a fidie, Yeko solo, and I will break here we. Now, Kwabansa for say, Ashanti could easily be a country, in quote, the voice of the Fanti Confederacy, Professor Ahwoi, and will say, when we say that the Ahwoi brothers are the bane of Kumasi development when it comes to the NDC, this is what we mean. According to Kwabansa for what you said, the Ahwoi brothers, which is Ahwoi, Atto Ahwoi, they are against Ashanti development because they know the potential for Ashantis and it won't beat me at any given point. And so for Professor Ahwoi to come up openly, no, it may be making this declaration, it justify almost someone that be can say the vice chairman of the Fanti Confederacy, Professor Ahwoi, as omo issues with Ashanti for ye developing it could be a best answer 10 years by Ghana as a country. With mentality like this, there is definitely no way we are ever going to experience deeper decentralization. That means the delays in having Prempeh the first airport fully operating, Buankra inland port fully operating, MMDC elections delays, slow-paced development of other state institutions, Obuasi was deprived, and the speed to grab Nehi bauxite are all a grand scheme to prevent Asante from realizing the Great Asante project, and the trepidation of having a troublesome Asante in the future. As for that, it's unavoidable looking at the divide and rule tactics of their political party and the adherence to it as a master plan. Nokre say, expedited decentralization has the tendency to make Asante too strong or self-reliant, so a well-tailored plan for the belly-centric Accra project to remain intact is the only way to hold Ghana together when a supposed authority on local government has a mentality like this. Ocha, Professor Ahwoi, Nadri Kuta Womo, any party is to make sure say, yeah, Asante for any feeling good. What is a development and course of infrastructure, no, restricting or airports, the Buankra Inland project, MMDC elections, development, Ahwoi, and then almost resources ahodo so yemfa ni nyina nko nkran, so that they will be left with nothing to actually feel too empowered and feel too powerful. Say, best already the person will break away. And according to Kwabnansa for you said that is why as a year concentrated too much project, ewo Accra ya abandon the Ashanti region and other people because these people say Accra na basis ahodo in fact development ahodo project ahodo eboa so if fully self-reliant. Then one day they rise up to okay, I feel cry, you person break here we. And what you say, that statement opening making say, one day say benya troublesome Ashanti he will beat me as in future. Say it's unavoidable. Definitely one day ebeba. Or say definitely ebeba. When an ebeba based on divide and rule tactics on one party, the Ahwoi party no NDC for no or more aye. And it is part of a master planner NDC for war against the Ashantis. That is Kwabnansa for. Then Richmond was able to say, in simpler terms, don't develop such areas with separatist tendencies, else they will break away when they feel they have enough amenities or infrastructure. So technically, that is on also sided with Kwabnansa for Edieno. This is why successive governments neglect such areas. But if separation is what will develop such areas, then so be it. In the end, we will still be neighboring countries, and that's not new. This man sounds very foolish when he said, if not for the British, Ashanti would have conquered Ghana. Fact is that time there was no Ghana to be conquered in the first place. And Nkrumah and the CPP is the sole creator of Ghana, and he did that by bringing in the Ghana state and lost it, the northern territories made up of different kingdoms, Asantis, Guans, the Transvolta, Togoland, etc. There is no single evidence say Ashanti folk could have conquered all the above mentioned states, except for the Akan-speaking areas, with the exception of Achem, who once defeated the Asantis because Ashanti has never gone to war with any of the northern territories or kingdoms. Asantis has never fought the Awes, they dare not. The only fight Asantis fought outside the Akan-speaking area is the Gans at the Katamanso War, of which Asantis were defeated. So this man cannot say Ashanti would have conquered Ghana because there was no Ghana in the first place. This man also lied when he said Ghana is a colonial construct because a place like the Transvolta Togoland was never colonized by the Britain, and the colonial master didn't put together the country Ghana. It was Nkrumah. So this is a young boy or no tiano for no and penifo munim history kasa or also challenge wo mo abusia. Said it on social media and to be a feel say opinion and will be feels with him too much. So comments are everywhere in reaction to that video, and there is more. So social media videos now say any amount for kasa obi e ka de ope or mo feel say or support statement na or mo interpreting in a way or man kasa feel obi e ka ne de. But which mind is to present, and as usual ubetimi achewa your comment section meeting edck. And our first time I mean now say we nyabre e de ma me channel ne so.